All right, there we go. So a little bit about me. I'm Métis. Often when I enter these types of situations, I am awfully very lonely, being one of the only women professionals in this field. I definitely try to encourage more into it. My kids hate IT, though. They purposely don't want to learn any of it, so that's kind of ironic. That's my oldest daughter there, Angela, in the photo. As I was already introduced, I'm a senior solutions architect with Nedhe. I still do work with Xerox, and so some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about will kind of fall under their purview a little bit. I have 2 different radio shows. One specifically that applies to this is IT-based, and I spend probably about 60% of the time talking about security because it's top of mind for a lot of users. Whenever you're listening to the news and stuff, you hear about all these security breaches, and just the average user, that's terrifying, right? And I want people to love it, okay? There's a reason why I'm in this field. I want them to be excited. I want them to get into it, and so I like breaking things down into more plain text for them, so I love doing that. You know, I say 20 years experience, but really I started out when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, breaking into the school's computer systems because I had nothing else better to do. So I think it was just kind of foreshadowing what I was going to be getting into when I got older. The other stuff, she already told you all about. It's kind of boring, but just gives you some context as to my experience. So the agenda, we're going to be talking about what is OCAP. This is something that came up last year when I was speaking about data governance. Lots of questions, so I wanted to make sure I incorporated that within my talk. We're going to explore why it's important to be protecting data and caring about the privacy. We'll review about audits and risk assessments. That's been becoming more and more a part of my job. As people are moving into the cloud, they're starting to implement AI tools. Copilot is a great example. People are becoming hyper aware of the holes they have in security and being held accountable. And if they want to get insurance as well, they have to meet certain requirements. So it's becoming a huge component of my job. We're going to specifically mainly look at the Microsoft resources that are available to help safeguard and implement some of the compliance restrictions and regulations. There are lots of others, but Microsoft really does a fantastic job, at least with the stuff I'm going to be talking about today. And then at the end, we're going to be talking about the end user and how critical they are with cybersecurity. You know, there's a bunch of talks that have already happened that keep bringing it up, that the end user is 88% responsible, I think the last guy said, for data breaches. And here's the thing, too. This isn't malicious people. Right? This isn't the person that got really ticked off that you fired them. These are well-intentioned employees. They think they're helping. They're trying to do right by the company, and they just don't realize some of the ramifications that can happen. So let's talk about OCAP. This was developed First Nations Information Government Center. I would write that down to make sure I could do the acronym. I hate acronyms, there's way too many of them. But they coined these principles, and it's ownership, control, access, and possession. So just like the next point says, these principles emphasize how First Nations should have control over data collection processes and that they own and control how this information can be used. This is massive. So with this Nedhe, they're forging new relationships and they're really trying to make a huge impact, and they've been acquiring and partnering up with different Indigenous companies to do a wide variety of different services. And so this comes into play a lot because we develop a lot of different relationships with not only communities but other organizations, and it's who owns that data? Who's allowed to access that data? How long are we going to keep that data? Can it be shared within different projects? All those kinds of things. And so it's really critical we cover those things. And so part of the reason why they brought me in on their team was to develop policy and procedures and a set of kind of compliance standards that they're going to meet and fall in line with OCAP. So why do we, care, right? Any Google search will give you a list. And in general, these kind of 5 main components are going to come up as to why you should care about protecting your data and caring about privacy. So right off the bat, we're going to talk about safeguarding your intellectual property, right? Our data, our information, it's an asset. And it's important that we're taking care of that. Of course, the financial integrity, the costs associated, operational resilience. The 2 that I'm going to be primarily focusing on, though, is the ethics and trust and reputation component of why we should care, as well as the regulatory compliance and legal liability. So, why are audits and risk assessments important? In a nutshell, it's going to help you be proactive with your defense, right? We don't want to be in a place of reacting to what has happened, right? We know that data breaches happen. We know incidents happen. We hear about it in the news, from small to major. And so we want to put safeguards. We want to put hurdles to stop and prevent that sort of thing from happening. The compliance component. This is huge. We have to meet certain regulations. Definitely, different industries will have a different set of regulations. So even with that huge list of, acronyms and numbers, I can tell you I've done so many other ones, right? Because each industry is very specific and it updates and changes every year. So it's not something like, oh, well, we met it last year, so we're good now. No, it doesn't cut it anymore. We're looking at risk management, so we need to, assess when something happens, what are we going to do about it, who's responsible about it, what are the set of procedures that are going to fall in place, who's taking ownership of it, how is it going to maybe be reported to the public, right? We need to know chain of command, all those kinds of things. And so that comes into risk management, as well as the financial burden of dealing with incidents. Employee training, this one's going to be massively huge, especially with just the liability of where most data breaches occur. We're going to touch base, that's how I'm going to close out things. It's massive, it's always underrated. We don't spend anywhere near enough attention training and helping our end users better understand why should we care about privacy? Why do we care about protecting things? And how it actually really relates to them, right? You're going to get far more of a buy-in from your end users if they really understand what's behind it, right? And it's not just a concept, just some words. Incident response planning. So again, this is kind of tied in a little bit with risk management as well, but it's like, okay, when an incident happens, what are we going to do about it? What are the steps? What are the controls involved? And the whole process throughout. And then being able to adapt to change. So just like I said, with especially with compliance, when we have to meet certain regulations and legal requirements, those are continually updating, usually yearly, but sometimes it's more often than that. And trends, different things that are going on in the market, right, are happening all the time. So we need to be reviewing these policies on a regular basis and updating them and being willing to have actually a set of procedures on how to do that. What is the approval process? What regulations are we supposed to meet? Are we in compliance? This becomes really, really huge. So, like I said, I'm going to be focusing mainly on Microsoft's things. And this is one thing, there's a few things that I actually think Microsoft has done really, really well with. I'll go through the list and then I'll be a bit more specific. So we have Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection. This is kind of your initial kind of baseline email protection. So this is your anti-spam malware, the thing that's checking links, attachments, those types of things falls under there. When we talk about Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, this is what's physically on the computer. So we're thinking antivirus, firewall, attack surface reduction, endpoint response, okay? Then when we talk about Microsoft Defender for clouds, cloud apps, this is amazing. I get to play a lot with AI. I'm a massive fan of AI. I use it all the time in security. That's where I get to do magic. And it's not really magic, but this is where I can really help fortify and protect just the infrastructure and the data. Then we're talking about Intune MDM endpoint managers. So this is where you're managing the devices. You can be pushing different applications, different security protocols. This is where your group policies are falling in line with. I want to be able to control how people can access data, what applications they can use to access the data, where they can access the data. I want to have complete control. I can have complete control and decide it using Intune MDM. And this can be used within, strictly in the cloud or in a hybrid environment. And you're going to be integrating it with all the other services. And then the Purview solutions, this is where the data governance side comes into play. And just like the guy before me was talking about, Purview isn't really technical. Absolutely, you're going to have someone like me, an architect, that's going to help build the infrastructure to implement the compliance standards and regulations that's going to automatically be applied to the data. But this is where I'm going to be bringing in all of the different departments. A lot of communities and businesses don't really understand the full scale of this because each department has a different set of rules that they need to, meet and protect. How long they have to keep data. What can be sent through email or sent by text. What can, be printed or viewed. That's all going to fall within there. And the big push for that, again, I'm going to be using AI mainly. You can do static labeling, but we want to make it as simple as possible for the end user, right? We're all fallible. We all can make mistakes. We might also not know when we should label something as sensitive data and when we shouldn't. So we can actually create different kind of tagging systems within there where it can happen automatically, and it's automatically, okay, it's going to apply this retention label. And one of the really cool things with Purview is you can have multiple tags applied to a said document, and it's going to maintain the most strict one, right? So even if it has a tag on there where it's like, okay, we want you to securely remove it from the systems within 3 years, but there's another one, let's say there's a litigation hold on it. Let me tell you a story about how nothing's happening to it, okay? Litigation hold is a big stop sign. And so you can do some really cool things. And within Purview, they have a set of different regulations that you can meet, and you can select your region and it lists them there. And so if you're in the healthcare industry, it has kind of the standards there. In the financial district, it has those. And so it's really nice that it has kind of those preset templates that you can already jump off from and build upon. But then, of course, it's fully customizable and can get more complicated and intricate from there. And so that's where the magic happens there. But it's really, short of building the infrastructure, it's not going to be technical, and it's not a short process. Often I will get people coming up to me and they're like, okay, we need to implement this yesterday. And I'm like, yeah, let me tell you a story about how we have to bring everyone to the table and we need to discuss things and really figure out what's going on. So, like I said, I want to wrap up a bit here with talking about the end user and the importance of bringing them into it. So, as much as I want to automate things and have the system automatically decide, yes, this is sensitive information, you cannot email it. You can try all you want, it's not going to happen. Oh, you want to share it with this person. This person is not a part of this permission group, this security group. You are not allowed to share it with this person. Yes, all that stuff is great, but we need to, explain to the end user, why is that important, right? Why can't I just help out my colleague instead of them following the proper procedure and policy that's in place for them to gain access and to utilize that information? So what we want to do is we're going to start with having policies and procedures that are going to clearly outline what is expected of staff and what kind of process they need to follow. And it needs to be easily accessible for everyone, and in as plain English as possible where it can be, because it can kind of get a bit legal. The next one is provide ongoing social engineering and cybersecurity training. So you can't just say run phishing campaigns and think, oh, you're great, you have security training covered. Absolutely not. You're going to be needing to do things like coffee houses. You're going to be maybe wanting to show videos. You might have weekly newsletters. You need to also make them engaging, and it's important to make it specific to your industry or what you're doing, but also to your audience, right? How do they absorb content the best? And make sure you're hitting kind of multiple avenues. Have the visual, have the audio, have the written word, right? You want to make sure you're connecting with everyone. And if you can have that interactive component as well, all the better, but you want to switch it up. You want to keep it engaging. It's too easy for us to kind of tune out security because everyone's talking about it. We get really bored of hearing about it, and we're like, yeah, of course I know. Yeah, I have MFA, whatever. And we tune it all out. And when we make it more specific, we make it engaging, it helps keep it top of mind for people, okay? Of course, run the phishing campaigns and simulation. We want to provide a knowledge base of cybersecurity terms and types of attacks. So again, it's about, part of the reason why I do the radio show is I think knowledge and information is power. And the more we allow people to absorb, especially if they want to, I think that's huge. We want to help empower them. And I love it when they're curious about what I do and the things that are out there. And so we want to provide a resource that we know, the organization knows is factual and good and important to what falls in line with our policy and standards. And then, of course, the next thing is we want to make sure we're encouraging users to report when they identify potential vulnerability. So all too often, people are scared to death to tell you that they clicked a link in an email. They're like, holy crap, I'm going to get fired. I am not doing that. And they're terrified, right? And kind of rightfully so. We need to stop that. These malicious people, I can tell you, they are incredibly smart, okay? And people get mad at me because I can admire some of their efforts. I can tell you 6 weeks ago, I had a user who did end up clicking a link, and it faked MFA and everything. It was brilliant, and it was so perfect, and it looked like Microsoft site. It was a thing of beauty, honestly. Mad respect to that group. And they broke in. Now, luckily, in the back end, I ended up catching it. I blocked it right away. But that person, she immediately had reported it to the department. So people were on it right away. The key thing is knowing about what's going on, having a pulse on what's happening within your network, and putting things in place and deciding whether or not it's also a great training moment for other people, right? And different attack venues are happening all the time, right? Everyone here, I'm sure, has gotten text messages and stuff of like, hey, confirm your food order, and those types of things. Do not confirm your food order, okay? But the landscape is changing all the time, and so we really want people not to feel dumb if they click them. My dad fell for one of them, and not only am I in security, but my sister developed security software for banks. He clicked the link, and his stuff got stolen. Everyone is susceptible. We all have moments. I have no doubt at some point I will click the link, and I will hate myself for it, okay? They are clever. They are preying upon us being busy, and just slipping up. And so that's part of the reason why we need to have that ongoing training and get rid of that stigma entirely and get them to be a part of the solution and empower them. So, questions, comments, concerns? Come on, guys. Last time I had at least 6. Everyone has especially when we talk about compliance and the policies and the regulations. It can be dry, but it's massively huge now. Or not. Screw it. Let everyone have your stuff. Thank you for my TED Talk.